Federal judges are getting pissed off and annoyed, and they're fighting back because they can't figure out, and they feel like the Trump administration is playing a shell game, because they are, with what or who is DOGE, what or who is Elon Musk, what are his powers, why is he moving with such velocity, speed, and opacity that they can't figure out what he's all about. Isn't that part of the game? Try to destroy the government before our very eyes, before we realize it's happened? Well, the jig is up. Judges know. We've got a series of judges, for instance, that are starting to issue orders to bring some transparency and some sunshine to what Donald Trump is doing. One judge in particular, Judge Cooper, has already ruled that the Department of Government Efficiency Services and Elon Musk are subject to public records laws. They are agencies or quasi-agencies, and they're subject to FOIA. You want to learn what FOIA is all about? We do it on the Legal AF podcast. Sometimes we break out into a law school class, and here's a clip from this week's edition, the After Dark edition. Here we go. Michael Popok, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, coming up. In this case, we've got a judge, Judge Cooper, in the District of Columbia, for the first time. It's hard to believe it's the first time, but we're only 60 days into the administration, so everything sort of kind of a first time, declaring that DOGE and Elon Musk are subject to public records law, which we call FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, which is a big deal because they've been trying to hide in a surreptitious fashion everything that DOGE is all about, behind the cover of night, behind executive privilege, using velocity and opaqueness to try to cut the government down to size without congressional oversight or public accountability. And Chris Cooper, the judge, has had enough. And he's ruled for the first time that DOGE service and Musk must disclose in public records everything about their existence and operations, period. And we'll talk more about that. It's a great case brought by Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington crew. And then we'll turn to another landmark bombshell, the First Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston, Massachusetts, joining with two other circuits to declare that Donald Trump's efforts to use an executive order to rip the beating heart of birthright citizenship out of our Constitution is unconstitutional. And they will, for now, not agree with the Trump administration. They will not block the nationwide injunction put in place by Judge Sorokin up in Boston, Massachusetts. They will join with the Ninth Circuit and the Fourth Circuit and this is not on the merits of the appeal, but it sort of is. And we'll tell you the difference between that and how this will now set up a pretty rapid appeal to the United States Supreme Court as we battle this out. And Karen and I will give our best analysis and estimate about what will happen next in that particular case. I talked a lot about in a recent hot take about the smallest of agencies. I said the smallest will lead us. But there is a case about the African development entity set up by Congress to invest in Africa and in that continent that had been completely eviscerated and shut down, even worse than U.S. aid, overnight by Donald Trump trying to put in one of his lackeys, Mr. Morocco, to head that organization. And the board and its executive chairman fought back. And they pulled the Judge Leon, a senior judge, and he put an administrative stay in place. But now he's lifted the stay, but with some words to the Trump administration. Are they falling on deaf ears? Does it matter? What does it all mean about Donald Trump's takeover in broad daylight of agencies and the cutting the legs out from under congressional funding and mandates before our very eyes? And then we'll end today with a very interesting and kind of sets our teeth on edge a little bit in many, many ways. The case of Mahmoud Khalil. It was a green card holding graduate student at Columbia University. I almost demonstrated I don't live near New York any longer and misnamed the university, who led the pro-Palestinian movement on the campus, one of the leaders there, one of the leaders of Divest, trying to force schools like Columbia to divest in protest of Israel's policies. I don't necessarily agree with his what he's saying under the First Amendment, but I will defend till the very end his right to say it. And as a green card holder, not to have ICE burst through his door in front of his 8-month pregnant wife, who's a U.S. citizen, and whisk him off to Louisiana in 24 hours in order to avoid the jurisdiction of a New York judge. That New York judge, who we're going to talk about, held a hearing recently, a series of hearings about this and about the ability of Donald Trump on the fly to use ICE as judge, jury, and executioner to revoke people's green card and other legal documented status because they don't like what they're saying. And we'll break it all down right here. The only place I know on the dial that does it. Legal AF. Karen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Popok? I'm so happy. It's Wednesday.
I know. That used to be Hump Day, remember? And now it's Legal AF Day.
I know. Oh, I have to fix there we go. I have to match you there. That's much better.
Are you matching my head?
I'm matching your headspace. But yeah, I used to, Wednesdays were always like, oh, it's the middle of the week, whatever. But now I wake up every Wednesday. I'm so excited that it's Legal AF Day and I get to have a break from the legal work that I do the rest of the week. So I'm so excited to be here.
The drudgery of representing actual clients. Yeah, I get it. I get it. People know that I kind of moved out of that world come the election. I have some clients. I don't want to undermine them. I do have some remaining clients, but my day-to-day practice is really here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. Before we jump in, I know, Karen, you and I talked about it before. We just rolled the odometer on the Legal AF channel. We just went over today 500,000 subscribers in less than 6 months. I couldn't ask for better. It reinforces my pep in my step every morning when I go to the Legal AF channel to curate it, to develop content. I know when you're not busy doing law work, you're over there with us as well. And just a shout out to those that have helped contribute besides our audience, without which we would not be in existence. But we've got Court Accountability Action, Lisa Graves, Alex Aronson, and Mike Sachs. We've got Dina Dahl. We've got Shan Wu. We've got me. We've got you when you can do it. Just an amazing group of people every hour doing something at the intersection of law and politics. Thank you to our audience. Check us out. Legal AF MTN from Midas Touch Network on that. Let's, people come here for the ads and they stay for the analysis. Let's get to the analysis and talk about this. Really, I mean, we're running out of adjectives to use for certain developments in the Trump administration, but this really is a landmark. As I joked on a recent hot take about it, it's like the piñata of DOGE and Musk is about to break open. And this is a big hit on the piñata. Cooper, a very good judge in District of Columbia, took one look in 37 pages at all the record that had been developed about the velocity at which DOGE has been operating, which is part of its power, its superpower, and the opaqueness and the surreptitiousness of its conduct, and said, yeah. And the way it's exercising executive power in a way that a quote unquote, as Donald Trump likes to call it, or his administration, and a simple advisor to Donald Trump doesn't really do. And to call him an advisor is an insult to our intelligence and an insult to the court. And the judge said, because the issue was whether they are subject to public records law because they're an agency. If they're not an agency and they're merely some sort of advisor to the president, then we got the whole executive privilege problem about what they are, whether they can testify or provide documents at all. So Crew sued DOGE services and others and demanded 2 sets of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests, one against the Office of Management and Budget, because that's where all the bodies are buried too, about funding cuts and staff cuts and all of that. And the other directly against DOGE service. And the Trump administration fought back, right? And I'll let you take it from there about executive privilege and the fight back by the administration, Karen.
Yeah. So look, what's happening here is DOGE wants to be able to have complete control over the executive branch and all of the agencies. And so in order to do that, so that they can crash and burn our economy and dismantle our government, to take money away from people who need it, and Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and everything else. I mean, they're literally trying to dismantle the United States government. And in order to do that, they have to have certain authority or certain power. And so to do that, they force their way into a different agency that already existed within the executive branch. And it was like an IT agency. I can't remember what it was called. So that's how they gained access to these agencies. The problem is if they are an agency, if that is actually what they are, then as you said, Popok, that subjects them to certain rules, laws, requirements, etc. One of them is that the head of DOGE has to be appointed by the president with the advice and consent of the Senate, which has not happened, right? And so they keep saying, oh, he's just an advisor. Oh, it's not an agency. It's like they're gaslighting the American people and everybody who actually sees what it is. Of course, Elon Musk is the head of it. And of course, it's an agency. And they literally try to say, oh, no, nothing to see here. But what we're seeing and what happened in this case with Judge Cooper is he basically said, no, that is not the case here. That is not what's happening. This is an agency, and therefore you are subject to the laws of this land. Now, what is FOIA? It stands for the Freedom of Information Act. It's something that is extremely important in government agencies. There's something called FOIL in New York State, the Freedom of Information Law. That's what applied to me when I worked for a state government agency, the Manhattan DA's office, for my entire career. We had a whole unit set up, a whole group of people whose job was nothing more than to respond to these FOIA or FOIL requests, because any single person, doesn't matter who you are, can submit a FOIL request to a government entity and ask for certain records. The New York City Police Department, same thing. I bet they have over 100 people who do nothing but respond to FOIA requests. And why is that? It's because you don't automatically get whatever you ask for. You get certain things, and of course, certain sensitive things you can't get, or certain things have to be redacted. But someone has to go through and apply the law that says these are the things you have to give over and these are the things you don't. And it's a really important part of keeping the lights on and the transparency in the government. It gives the American people the ability to see what's going on in your government, because transparency is key, obviously. And here we have a federal judge, as you said, who basically said that, look, you're working in secret, you're working really fast, and it's the very thing that makes you subject to FOIA, right? That you are acting like an agency. You have the power, you have the authority. And so you're the very entity. I don't care what you call it. I don't care what you say it is. I don't care what you are going to label certain things. You're acting like something that is considered an agency. And therefore, you are subject to things like congressional oversight. Congress can pass a law like the Freedom of Information Act, and you're subject to it. And so the judge said basically that you're subject to the public records law. You must, but he also knows this is going to be appealed, right? So knowing that, what he said was, look, you must preserve everything while you do your appeals, so that it doesn't get, it's called spoliation, right? It doesn't get destroyed, which you could imagine that happening, right? To try to avoid it. A government agency could do that. And so he said, no, you must keep it. You must, and he ordered them to keep it while you are appealing it, if you choose to appeal it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say you have to give a rolling production, meaning that what's being asked for is so voluminous, and I realize you have to go through it all and redact the things that you can't have, et cetera. So what I'm going to do is, rather than wait until the end, you're going to have to do it on a rolling basis. So as you go through documents and as you find them and you take out whatever it is that you're going to take out, the sensitive information, you have to give it over on a rolling production basis. So it's a pretty big deal. And I think it's great. It's a great ruling that essentially is telling Elon Musk and DOGE, we see what you are, and you're subject to the same laws that everyone else is. And thank God for Crew who's doing this. So it's pretty great. Judge Cooper didn't buy this whole, Musk is just an advisor kind of thing. And, he basically said, look, you're in a decision-making authority, and you're making cuts across the government, and that makes you subject to this. So I think it's great. I'm not holding my breath that we're going to see anything soon. But it's just to add one more thing. FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, is codified, if anyone wants to read it, in Title V of the U.S. Code, Section 552, and it grants individuals the right to request access to records from federal agencies. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal, and judges are finally starting to call out Musk and DOGE for what it is, and I think that's a positive sign.
Yeah, I mean, look, Judge Cooper did an amazing job in his analysis, and everything that the Trump administration pushed as the reason and rationale for not complying with FOIA was actually used. It was like hoisting them on their own petard, using it against them. The velocity and opaqueness by which they are operating, which was obviously by design, in order to catch Congress and the public by surprise, and to lay waste to the federal government and funding before anybody could figure out what had happened, is the very reason it demonstrates an exercise of executive power that's independent from Donald Trump. Donald Trump saying to the cabinet, come on, it's not must. You got to run your own cabinet. That, again, reinforces, along with his joint session speech and confession there, that Musk is exercising independent authority behind closed doors in the dark, surreptitiously, so surreptitious that the judge was like, and I don't like the fact that you're using Signal, which is an app that's used in communication that has an auto delete function that people use for secrecy purposes. That is against everything that is appropriate in government records, and you are to stop using it, and you are to make yourself, available and transparent to the American people. Now, Crew wanted all those documents to come out during this congressional debate about government and about the budget and about funding. And the judge was like, well, I'm not sure all of these documents are really necessary for the American people to see in time, like yesterday, but I do want them to come out quickly. So I don't want to wait I don't want to wait for a full production like 3 months from now. You start rolling production. And just for people to tune in here, tuning in late, rolling production, which I've been involved with a lot in e-discovery and civil cases, means you don't wait to a date certain to do a data dump of everything that you have. Like, okay, back up the tractor trailer or the terabyte digital version of that. Here you go. Boom, dump. It's a rolling production, meaning as you get documents together, and it better start soon, you start sending out half a terabyte, or whatever it takes to produce your documents, so that we get some of them now. We don't have to wait till the very, very end. So he ordered that as well. It's hard to believe that with over 100 cases, it's the first case where a federal judge has said, yeah, I can't figure out DOGE. It's way too opaque. But I can tell you one thing I have figured out is that it's exercising independent agency authority, and therefore is not covered by the executive privilege. He didn't mention executive privilege, that 4-letter word, by name, but that's the battle that's going to come up next. As we talked about on Saturday with Ben and me, the next big fight is going to be the Trump administration arguing, and I think unsuccessfully, that Musk is just an advisor and has no real power. And everything he's doing is he's advising the president, and there needs to be executive privilege that protects that. And he shouldn't be subject to FOIA, and he shouldn't be subject to depositions. And that's our position. I think that's a loser at the trial court level. I think that's a loser at the various circuit courts of appeal. And I do think, although I'll come back and tell you I was wrong, that at the Supreme Court level with Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, it's going to be a loser. He may not even get 4 votes for that proposition. Just the way he's using DOGE as the wrecking ball, the destroyer of all worlds, indicates it's exercising substantial executive function and authority in the dark. That's exactly what we don't want. The reason for FOIA, the reason for FOIL, the reason for public records laws in states is because we like to operate. We're supposed to operate government in the sunshine being the best disinfectant. And that's how we've always approached government. We don't allow smoke-filled back rooms to make deals. I mean, they still go on, but we leave it to public interest groups and NGOs like Crew to bring these to the forefront to federal judges' doorsteps and have them make the decision that Judge Cooper just made. Welcome back. We don't have a marketing department. We're completely independent. We're fierce. We speak truth to power. We're relentless, but we need help. And one of the main ways you can help is help grow our network and our channels. Here, the Legal AF YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. Our podcast grows organically by word of mouth. We are building this with our bare hands and yours without outside investors. So if you know about Legal AF and you like it already, I appreciate you. It's an hour-long podcast on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and on every audio podcast platform of your choice. Just come over to the Midas Touch Network. And if you didn't know why we called it Legal AF, now you do. And if you don't, join us Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Think of it like a TED Talk meets a law school class, but even more entertaining. That's our podcast, Legal AF. So if you want to just help us out and be our marketing department, we are. Take that clip, send it off to people in your life, and ask them to join our next episode with personal invitation from Michael Popok to you. Wednesdays, I do the show with Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. Saturdays with Ben Mysalis, and hot takes like this about every hour. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.